Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me today in practice. My name is Rachel Shepard. This class is designed for overall pelvic health. So you may like to have a blanket with you today. I'll offer it as a prop for a couple different movements that we'll be doing. We'll be releasing muscles around the pelvis. We'll get into some good and yummy stretches for the muscles around the pelvis. And then we'll finish up with putting some strength back into that area. So if you need to pause the video to go get a blanket, please do so here. And we'll start laying on our back. So bringing your body down to lay flat, I invite you to extend your legs out long. Now, if you're feeling a lot of tenderness through your lower back and having your legs long is a little too much pull, please feel free to slide your blanket underneath of your knees to give you a little bit of support. Take a moment to adjust your shoulders down the back. Feel the neck nice and long, maybe a little tuck, a little movement of the pelvis to create a little bit more softness through there just to start. And then maybe bring your hands to your hips or to your pelvic area. Soften your eyes, maybe allow them to close all of the way. Take in a deep breath, opening the mouth, let it go, and welcome to your practice. Begin to send your awareness and your breath down into the low belly, down into the hips. Just taking a few moments here as we get started to acknowledge what we're bringing with us to our mat. Noticing how we're feeling. In a physical sense, noticing how our muscles are feeling, our skeleton, but also in a mental and emotional sense. Where's your mind? How are you feeling? Send your breath down towards your hips, maybe noticing the rise and fall of your lower belly under your hands. And now let's bend the knees and we'll bring the feet flat to the floor. Have your knees about hips width distance apart, feet about hips width distance apart. And we're going to start with a gentle somatic movement flow of around the clock. So just getting our minds oriented to the pelvis and all the muscles that work around that area. So if you imagine that your pelvis was a clock, 12 o'clock being your belly button, 6 o'clock being your pubic bone, okay? And then 3 o'clock being your left hip, 9 o'clock being your right hip, I think. There's a little bowl of water in the middle of your pelvis, so in the middle of that clock, imagine. And keeping the water very smooth, trying not to let it slosh around too much, we're gonna pour the water towards 12 o'clock. So in other words, tuck the tailbone under, flatten your lower back, and feel your hip bones rolling back away from your thigh bones. Now let's see if we can get the pelvic floor integrated a bit here. Can you lift the muscles of the pelvic floor? So drawing the pubic bone, tailbone, and your sitting bones towards the center and up. Maybe feeling this lifting sensation of pubic bone to belly button. Then we're going to tilt the pelvis the opposite way. So imagine pouring that water to 6 o'clock, or pressing your tailbone down, rolling the hip bones forward and creating a more arch in the low back. Take a moment here and just notice how your low back feels. Maybe notice how the area around your SI joints feel. And then we're going to pour the water back to 12 o'clock, tilting the hips back, and feel the pelvic floor muscles lift. Feel that internal pulling up. And then back to 6 o'clock. So we're moving nice and slowly. Pay attention to how you feel the muscles contracting here in your low back. And then as we release one more time, pouring the water to 12, how you feel the muscles contracting in the low belly. And then allow your pelvis to return to a neutral sort of space. Allow the water to settle. Now we're going to try to pour the water from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. So again, 3 being your left hip. See if you can pour that water in the middle of the pelvic bowl over to 3 o'clock. So what I feel is my left hip gets a little heavier to the ground. My left oblique waistline area is contracting a little bit more. And I feel a little more contraction in the right side of my low back. So be curious of what you're feeling to get that hip over there. And then we'll pour the water over to 9 o'clock. Taking a moment just to very mindfully notice, okay, what do I feel contract? You don't necessarily need to know the name of your muscle. Just notice the area. And then we'll pour the water back over to 3, going nice and smoothly. A lot of people tend to have more sensation on one side than the other, or one side feels a little more coordinated or natural to tilt that way. It's a very small movement. You might not even be seeing anything happening in my body, but I assure you the pelvis is tilting. We'll pour it back over to 9. And then just one more time, 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Maybe notice if you feel one of your SI joints a little more protruded than the other, or more tender. Those are those 2 little bumpy bones at the base of the spine, just above the sacrum. Some people might have dimples in their low back right there. And then allow your hips to come back to a neutral setting. And so now that we've discovered those 4 points, 12, 6, 3, 9, we'll start to swirl the water around the clock. So let's start by pouring the water to 12. So going back to that sensation, flattening the back, pulling the abdominals in more so than pushing into your feet, right? So try to make that movement come from the pelvis rather than from the feet. And then start to shift that water, roll the water over to 3 o'clock, and then slowly into 6 o'clock, feeling the lower back arch, kind of massaging that left glute as you go. And then over to 9 o'clock, kind of massaging the right glute as you go. And then coming back to 12 o'clock, so flattening the back. So if you were to put your hands on your hips, you would kind of make this little circular kind of motion happening with the hands, if your hands were kind of helping to guide this movement around. Again, go nice and slowly. Notice if you feel any sensations like numbing or kind of clicking anywhere. And then let's start to go the opposite direction. Make sure you're breathing in a way that feels natural. Let the jaw relax. Pouring the water towards 12 o'clock for me now. You might be at a different number, that's okay. Pouring it over to 9. Pouring it to 6. Pouring it to 3. And then back to 12. Let's go maybe 1 or 2 more circles in this counterclockwise way. Try not to be thinking too much about it. Just be more noticing, just being in the movement. It's okay, you know, if your circle feels a little more like a square, you know, no need to judge. Just slow things down, smooth things out, pay attention. And then allow everything to just settle back to a more neutral space. So along with allowing us to become more mindfully aware of the musculature of the pelvis, that movement, it's also you might have felt a little massage for the sacrum and the low back. Extend the legs out long. Taking in a deep breath and just notice if anything's shifted, any different sensations in the body. Right. Our next movement is going to be a psoas release. So let's draw the right knee in. Feel free, if you can, try and pull the knee all the way to the chest. You can interlace your hands around the front of the knee. If you need a belt or something, or a towel, or maybe your blanket, you can use if you can't quite hold on to the knee, or if that's not quite comfortable. Please feel free to grab a prop. Draw the right knee in close and just observe what kind of sensations you might feel through the right side of the low back, maybe your right glute, the front of your right hip. And then noticing what you feel through the front of that left hip and thigh, especially around the hip crease. We're going to be releasing that deep hip flexor and a lot of other little hip flexors as well. Let's point the left toes straight up towards the ceiling, so feeling your kneecap pointing to the ceiling as well. And then we're going to lift the left leg a couple of inches. You don't have to go very high, just enough so that you can feel the effort, the shortening of the muscles through the left side of the hip. And then we're going to very slowly release the left leg back down, still releasing. And then slowly let go of all of the effort there and just notice how that feels to soften around your thigh, your hip, even maybe down the foot. And now we'll have our hip turned out in external rotation. So let's turn the left knee and toes to the left. And keeping that external rotation, let's lift the left leg a few inches, just enough so that you can feel the action of shortening the muscles. Noticing how it feels different, maybe getting a little more inner thigh action going on here. And then very slowly releasing the left leg back down. And maybe drawing the left knee in a little bit closer. Or the right knee in a little closer. Oh, I'm backwards. I'm working with my different legs. Anyways, you don't need to know that. We're going to take now our long leg, I'll just say whatever long leg you have there, and let's turn it inwardly rotated. So turning the knee and the toe in as best we can. And then we're going to lift that leg. Notice the effort. See if you might be able to internally rotate a little bit more. And then softly allow that leg to come back down. Notice that complete releasing of any kind of muscular effort. The foot might flop out. See if you might draw that bent knee in a little bit closer. And then take a moment just to acknowledge any different sensations you feel. Does your long extended leg feel flatter or longer? And then let's release that knee that's bent into the chest. Extend both legs long. Take a deep breath. Notice if the different sides of your hips feel different. And we'll draw now the opposite knee into the chest. Giving it a nice little squeeze. Taking a moment to observe the sensations around the glute, around the front of the hip. Maybe the low back. Keeping the shoulders and the jaw soft, let's turn our extended leg to neutral, so the kneecap and the toes pointing to the ceiling. And then we'll lift that leg a couple of inches, feel the action of the muscles shortening. And then slowly allow that leg to release all the way back down. Feel that complete release of any kind of effort, and then maybe draw your bent knee in a little closer. All right, now with the external rotation, so the knee and the toe are turned out, and we'll lift that leg, noticing the action of those muscles shortening, noticing maybe more inner thigh effort here, and very mindfully, very slowly, letting that leg return back down. Ooh, felt a little pop on that one. And let go of all that effort. Maybe draw the bent knee in a little closer. Then from here, internally rotate, turning the toes in, knee in, and then lifting the leg, noticing, and slowly releasing it back down. Let go of all the effort there. Draw the bent knee in a little bit closer. Notice if you feel that you've gotten any more range out of either side of the hips. And then we can extend both legs long. A moment to observe and enjoy a deep breath. Alrighty, so from here, let's turn onto our side. I'm going to turn onto my right side, as that is where the camera's facing. You can take your blanket if you would like, laying on your side, to use it as a pillow. That feels really nice, so I'm going to do that. If you would prefer to use your hand to support your head, you can do that too. We'll have our knees bent, feet and knees stacked. You can relax your waist. You don't really have to hold anything tight here. Just relax in this laid position. And keeping the feet together, we're going to lift the top knee. So noticing as you lift the top knee, not really rolling the hip back a whole lot. Noticing any efforts through the outer hip, the outer glute. And then very slowly, allow that top leg to start to release down. Feeling the muscles in that top glute gently releasing, slowly releasing all of their tensions and efforts. Once the knee comes all the way down, let go of everything, and that might mean something shifts. Maybe my foot slid, so maybe yours does too. Let's do that 2 more times. So creating the pandiculation through our abductors or abductors, lifting the top knee, and then very slowly releasing. Noticing if you're feeling any kind of like jumping or skipping of the leg as you slowly, notice I'm still going, still releasing, as you bring that knee down. And if you're noticing any kind of skipping or jumping, just a little fun nerdy fact, it's actually called sensory motor amnesia. So one more time, we're going to lift the knee. And the movements that we're doing here, these somatic movements, are geared towards stimulating our sensory motor cortex in the brain. Begin to slowly release that top knee down. And sometimes that area in the brain has forgotten how to communicate with different muscle groups. And when we feel that kind of clicking or ratcheting of the muscles, it's just a little sign that maybe the communication lines aren't super clear. Because what we want to feel, or maybe what we aim towards eventually, one day maybe, is having a very smooth release of the effort. Now we're going to keep our knees together. We're going to create little internal rotations, so creating the pandiculation of our adductors, our inner thighs. So we'll lift the top foot. Again, knees stay together. This lifting to your comfort level doesn't have to be too high. And then really slowly allowing that leg to come down. Still slow, still slow. I'm finding that I probably need to do this more often. I'm feeling very jumpy today, but my hips are feeling really tight today anyways, so that makes sense. Keep the knees together 2 more times like this. We're going to lift the top foot. Notice the efforts in your inner thigh. I'm feeling a lot through my hip flexor area. And I'm very slowly releasing. Be sure to let it relax all the way and give yourself a moment in between. 1 more time. Breathe. Soften your jaw, soften your eyes. Be aware of the sensations. Yeah, I definitely need to do this more. I'm feeling a lot of jumpiness around my hip. All right, so now we'll switch it to lay on our other side. You can get there however you're comfortable. If you want a moment to lay on your back just to kind of observe, please feel free to take a moment. So as you're ready, knees stacked, knees bent as well. Feet staying together for our external rotation. So lifting the top knee. Trying not to roll the hip back too much so that you can really feel into your abductors. And then slowly starting to take them down. And letting go of all of your effort. Even letting the bottom hip release, because you might be trying to stabilize a little bit with the bottom hip. Well, let's go again. We'll lift. Just kind of notice what you feel. There's no right answer. Even as your knee lowers, if you're finding that it is jumping around a lot, you don't need to criticize or judge that fact. It's simple information. Let go of all the effort. Take a breath, take a moment. And then one more time, externally rotating, lifting the top knee. Being mindful of sensation. And then slowly releasing all the way. Slow, slow, slow. Letting it all go. All right, internally rotating now here. So the knees staying together, and we'll lift the top foot. Feeling into the adductors, the adductors. And then slowly and carefully, mindfully, letting that leg drop. Not necessarily drop, release, I should say. That's a better word. Let all the effort go. Take a breath. All right, 2 more times with this internal rotation. I'm even a little bit jumpy coming up. Oh, my hips are real tight. I've been doing the Stairmaster a lot lately. It's great cardio, but it also really works those legs and hips. So if you're doing Stairmaster a lot or other running, this is a good class for you to do. If you're at a desk, or if you're just a person in general, this is good movement for you to do. Get you all released. Last time here. Slow, slow. And let it all go. All right, friends. Let's turn onto our back. Take a moment, let both legs extend out long. Observing if you feel any sort of differences and sensations from the very start when you first laid here. I certainly feel looser, more free around the glutes. So now let's just take some good stretch in. So bending the knees, I invite us to start with our supine pigeon pose, or figure 4 stretch as it's commonly known, crossing right ankle over the left knee, which might be perfect. You might be right where you want to be, getting a real good stretch. Depending on where you hold tension, moving around, you can access different areas. So I encourage you to maybe take a little rock around. If you'd like to bring your left foot off of the floor and reach through and hold on to that left leg somehow, you can do that. And we'll just spend a few nice deep breaths. Soften the shoulders, maybe gently draw them together. Relax the jaw, the back of the neck. Notice if you might pull the breath down towards the hips. You could stay just here. We'll spend a few more moments. Or if you'd like, we can come to the inverted cow face. I've also heard it called whale's tail, which is kind of cute. We can take our right leg, and you're just going to continue to cross the right leg over the left leg until the right knee is stacked with the left knee. And then from there, you can reach with your left hand to grab a hold of the right foot and kind of pull the right foot up towards maybe the top of your mat. And then maybe the right hand grabs your left foot and you kind of pull that left foot up towards the top of your mat. So I guess if you looked at yourself from the ceiling, you would resemble a whale's tail. And I get a good stretch here, kind of really targets into my piriformis muscle, which sometimes when it's inflamed might induce sciatic nerve pain. Please know that if it becomes too much, whatever stretch you get into, just back off. There's no reason to put yourself in pain as you're trying to release it. We'll take about 3 more big breaths. You might play with pressing your tailbone down and then allowing your tailbone to curl. And then gently unwind the legs. Maybe give your knees a nice circle. I like to separate my circles so the knees move away from one another. That just feels really nice on my low back, but you could certainly keep your knees together and circle. Let's circle the opposite direction. And then we'll cross the left ankle over the right knee for figure 4. Ooh, yep, that's tight. So just as before, you can keep your foot on the ground. You can just kind of rock a little bit, look for that happy place. You could pick the right leg up and hold on to it. Adjust the shoulders down the back, off the neck, soften your jaw. Oh, and breathe. Nice big breath, rejuvenating breaths. Part your teeth. Soften the muscles between your eyebrows. And then let's cross into whale's tail if you like, taking that left knee all the way so that it stacks on top of the right knee, lifting the left foot up, making the shin maybe parallel with the top of your mat. You could lift your head if you need to grab that other foot, and then lift that foot up. Maybe a gentle rock or tuck and tilt of the pelvis. Big breaths. Soft shoulders. All right, then we can let that go. Unwind. Take a little circling for your knees, just moving that stretch around. Circling opposite way. All right, and then from here, let's come all the way upright. We'll come to a tabletop position to start. So on hands and knees. And as we'll be coming into a lunge stretch, I invite you to use a blanket to just create some softness underneath of your knees. Okay. So kneeling on the blanket, you could also fold your mat in half if you need a little, if you don't have a blanket. And let's take the right foot forward. And we'll walk the hands up onto the right thigh. So coming up into a lunge position, have your feet in your knees, so your foot and knee hips width apart so that you have some stability there. It's a little easier to balance. And then bringing your right hand maybe to the low back, the sacrum area, Actively tuck the tailbone here. So really tight hip flexors, front of the hip, tend to like pitch us forward in the pelvis. So let's stretch those out by tucking the tailbone, right? And our left hip is over the left knee to start off with. Feel that right hip just gently drop, just so that's in line with the left, so they're nice and square. Actively draw the lower abdominal muscles in and up, so you're actively lifting the psoas, if you will, and other muscles. And you can stay right here. I'm already getting a nice sensation of stretch in the front of my hip, and you can stay here if you like. Or you might kind of heel toe your front foot forward a bit, and then allow yourself to bend deeper into the front knee, but don't go so far that your hips pitch forward and your back gets a big arch. Try to keep that active tuck through the tailbone. We'll take a few deep breaths here. If you'd like, another option would be to take the left arm, reach the left arm up, and I actually like to bend the elbow and kind of cradle the back of my head and lean my head back a little bit. All right, don't rush it. It takes time. If you need to back off a little bit, things become too intense, you back off and focus deeply into your breath. Can you breathe into your left hip, the left side of the low belly? Now, take one more full inhale and slowly bring your hands down to the ground with an exhale. And we'll take a few deep breaths in this more lizard style lunge. So you might allow your body just to kind of drape on top of your front thigh. Your left hand might be a little bit wide just to offer you some more support there. Feel free to let your head and your neck drop. Try to let go of any effort, just allow gravity to take the pelvis here. And then we'll softly release. You might release through a little half split. You might like to step back into down dog or maybe just tabletop for a few cat-cows. Just take a moment to let go of that side. And then let's step our left foot forward. Ooh. All right, coming up into our lunge. So right hip stacked over right knee. Legs hips width, create your base, your support. Left hand may come by behind the low back and just guide that pelvic tuck. Tuck the tailbone under like an Elvis pelvis thrust. Then you could stay right here. You might be getting like lots of sensation already happening around that front of the hip. Or you can walk the front foot forward a little bit and bend into the knee, but only letting yourself go so far that you can maintain that tuck. Actively draw the muscles of the abdomen in and up, so it is an active stretch. And then you could stay here with your arm relaxed down, or if you enjoyed the sensation of taking the right arm up, we can do that. Maybe cradle the back of the head and maybe lean back. Keep encouraging the tuck of the tailbone and focus on deep breaths down into that right hip. Soft toning of your left hip just to maintain stability so we don't fall over. And if you do fall over, no worries, just get back up. One more full breath, no rush. And then release the hands down to the floor. We'll come more into that more passive lunge, maybe draping the torso over the left thigh. You can adjust the back knee, maybe the right hand goes out a little bit to help hold us up. And feel free to let your neck drop, soften the head. apart the teeth, release your jaw. Take 2 more nice, long, slow yogi style breaths. And then just following your body's intuition, we'll release that side. Maybe a half split, maybe a down dog or some cat cows. And then we'll meet in a seated position. And just to help the pelvis release more easily, you might fold your blanket up, just use it as a little cushion underneath. And we'll come into Baddha Konasana, or bound angle pose. Bringing the bottoms of the feet together, allow the knees to drop wide, and please don't sacrifice your knees just to say that you've done this. You can put props under your knees to help them stay supported. You can change how far your feet are in relation to your body, so make this a comfortable space. And you could sit up tall. You might be getting plenty of sensation just being upright. But I also invite you, if it feels comfortable, to hinge at the hips to come forward. You can let go of your head and your neck, let gravity do some work for you. And just like the figure 4 pose, there can be a lot of stuff discovered in this shape. So I invite you to explore with maybe little sways from side to side. And if you find something really lovely, just take some time to enjoy that sensation. Give your body a little treat. And then as you're ready, another deep breath. Let's press ourselves back upright. All right, we'll make our way back down onto our back, just to put a little bit of strength back into the pelvis. After all this deepening, we want to make sure that we leave stable. Have your feet hips width distance, knees bent. And this is a somatic stability movement. It's just a glute bridge. So our area of focus is the glutes. Find that your feet are at a comfortable space. You're not too far or too close. And then we're going to work towards keeping the spine long. So not going into that pelvic tuck first, just keeping a nice neutral spine. Begin to slowly engage your glutes, just kind of squeezing the buttocks. Please don't give yourself a cramp. We'll start to lift the hips off of the ground, so hips, the back, and very slowly, right? It's a slow practice. And just exploring how high we want to lift. Maybe it's just a few inches. Maybe you want to lift all the way up. Focus your efforts around the glutes. Once you get to your highest point, you're going to release just about 25%. So releasing the glutes 25%, they might drop down a little bit. And then you're going to squeeze the glutes back up. So these small pulsations. So a slow squeeze back up. And then a very soft release, like 25% release. And then squeeze back up. We're going to do that one more time. So releasing about 25% of our effort. And then coming back to full effort squeeze, and then really slowly release 25%, and then 50%, and then 75%, and then release 100% all the way back down. And now from here, let's take the feet wide. So wider than hips distance, maybe mat distance. So this is just gonna access a little more of our outer glute stability, knee, mid. As you're ready, we'll slowly start to engage the glutes. And then we'll push into the feet. So there's some hamstring effort, yes. Just not so much that you cause a cramp. So if you start getting one or you start feeling one coming on, just don't go any farther. You don't need to cause pain. Slowly lifting still, find where you want to make your 100% effort. Give it a little squeeze, and then release 25% of that effort. And then squeeze back to your 100, and then release 25. One more time, squeezing up to 100, noticing what it feels like. And then we'll release 25%, 50%, 75% to 100%. Draw those knees to your chest. Inviting you to just kind of rock around a little bit. If happy baby pose is feeling natural, feel free to grab the feet and let them open, stretching big through the hips. And then we'll release all the way out. We'll come back to our original position, laying flat on the back, legs long, arms long by the sides. If you'd like, actually, you could return your hands to your hips just so you can feel that. And we'll spend a few moments just resting. Acknowledge your efforts. Acknowledge any shifts, differences physically, mentally, or emotionally. Has anything changed as you've been here on your mat? And then feel your breath. Let go of your effort and rest. Take a deep breath in. And then let it go. Settle your awareness in the center of your body. Just noting sensations that you feel in that space. And then allow that awareness to begin to extend farther out. Feeling the whole body. Begin to explore movement. Again, little wiggles, little stretches that are intuitive and feel nice. And gently begin to draw your way back to an upright seat. Maybe your eyes are closed or the gaze is just soft. Keep your awareness drawn in. Feel as your body realigns itself upright. And then I invite you to let the arms take one last stretch around, just sweeping the hands through the energetic field that surrounds us. And then pulling the hands into the heart. A gentle bow of our chin. May we have gratitude for our practice today. And I thank you so very much for joining me. Namaste.